But equally importantly, we're cracking down on more than $19 billion in fraud that was stolen by Somalian bandits. Can you believe that Somalia, they turned out to be higher IQ than we thought. I always say these are low IQ people. How did they go into Minnesota and steal all that money? And we have, they're pirates, they're good pirates, right? But we shoot them out of the water just like we shoot the drug boats out. They're not pirating too many boats lately, do you notice? When they go out into those boats, they want to take over $1.5 billion tanker loaded up with oil. And they say, we're going to blow up your boat. They have powerful weapons. You hit the side of the boat, you blow the whole thing up. The insurance companies are petrified, so they say, just give them the boat, we'll give them money instead. And I don't do that. We blow them right the hell out of the water. We see them going out, we blow them out of the water. We don't have any pirates so much anymore. If we do, they won't be there long. We've cut down with the hitting of the boats that are loaded up with drugs, including submarines. Can you believe they actually buy small, they call them mini subs, very fast. They're meant for drugs. We've knocked out 2 of them. The Democrats say they were fish.
The accountant knew something was wrong when she couldn't balance the books. Maria Santos had been hired by New Hope Community Services in August 2023 as their new financial manager, brought in to help the Minneapolis-based nonprofit prepare for an upcoming audit by federal grant administrators. The organization received millions in government funding annually to provide services to Somali refugees, job training, English classes, housing assistance, healthcare navigation, and needed clean financial records to maintain those grants. But 3 weeks into the job, Maria couldn't make the numbers work. The organization's bank statements showed $47 million in deposits over the past year, which matched reported grant funding and donor contributions. But the expenditure records showed only $31 million in documented spending. That left $16 million unaccounted for, money that had come in but apparently hadn't been spent on programs, salaries, or operations. Maria approached the organization's founder and CEO, Abdirahman Hassan, a 52-year-old Somali refugee who'd built New Hope into one of Minnesota's largest refugee assistance organizations. She explained the discrepancy in his office on a Tuesday afternoon, but it wasn't sufficient. And when Maria pressed harder over the following week, requesting access to storage areas where records might be kept, asking to review case files, trying to trace where $16 million had actually gone, she was abruptly fired. Abdirahman told her the organization was restructuring and no longer needed her position. Maria knew what that meant. She was being removed because she'd asked too many questions. And that $16 million discrepancy wasn't an accounting error. It was evidence of something criminal. She contacted the FBI's Minneapolis field office and filed a detailed report about the missing money, the lack of documentation, and her suspicious termination. What that fired accountant's phone call would trigger was one of the largest nonprofit fraud investigations in U.S. history, an operation that would expose how a trusted Somali community leader had transformed a refugee aid organization into a $250 million money laundering operation, with cash literally stacked inside the walls of his office. If this opening has you questioning how this could happen, tap like and comment nonprofit fraud so I know you're following, because what the FBI uncovered was corruption hidden behind humanitarian work. New Hope Community Services was founded in 2012 by Abdirahman Hassan, who'd come to Minneapolis as a refugee in 1995 after fleeing Somalia's civil war. His story was inspiring, arriving with nothing, learning English, working multiple jobs, eventually earning a social work degree, and dedicating his life to helping other refugees navigate the challenges he'd faced. New Hope started small, operating out of a shared office space and helping Somali families access housing assistance, translate documents, and connect with social services. But over a decade, the organization grew dramatically. By 2023, New Hope operated a 40,000 square foot facility, employed 180 staff members, and served over 15,000 refugee families annually. The organization's programs appeared comprehensive and legitimate. Job training workshops teaching resume writing and interview skills, English language classes for adults and children, housing assistance helping refugees find apartments and navigate lease agreements, healthcare navigation connecting families with medical services, and emergency financial assistance providing cash to families facing crises. New Hope received significant government funding, $23 million annually from federal refugee resettlement grants, state social service contracts, and city community development funds. It also received private donations from foundations, corporations, and individual donors who believed they were supporting vital refugee services. Abdirahman was celebrated as a community leader. He testified before Congress about refugee integration challenges. He received awards from nonprofit organizations and government officials. News articles profiled him as an example of the American dream, a refugee who'd built an organization that now helped thousands. But according to federal investigators, New Hope Community Services was one of the largest nonprofit fraud schemes in U.S. history. Abdirahman hadn't been helping refugees. He'd been stealing from them. And worse, he'd been laundering hundreds of millions of dollars for the Sinaloa cartel while using a humanitarian organization as cover. The FBI investigation triggered by Maria Santos's report began with a financial audit of New Hope's records. When FBI forensic accountants analyzed the organization's finances over 10 years, they found patterns that indicated massive fraud. New Hope reported spending $31 million annually on refugee services, salaries, rent, program materials, direct assistance. But when investigators verified those expenditures, they found significant inflation and fabrication. Salaries reported for employees who didn't exist, rent payments to properties New Hope didn't actually occupy, program materials purchased from vendors who weren't real companies, and direct assistance supposedly given to refugee families who'd never received anything. The organization was reporting expenditures that weren't happening, allowing Abdirahman to pocket the difference between reported spending and actual spending, an estimated $89 million over 10 years in stolen government grants. But that fraud, as serious as it was only part of the operation. Financial analysis revealed another pattern that was even more alarming. New Hope's accounts showed massive cash deposits that couldn't be explained by grant funding or donations. Over 10 years, $427 million in cash had been deposited into New Hope's bank accounts. But total legitimate revenue, grants, donations, program fees, was only $240 million. That meant $187 million in unexplained cash had flowed through a refugee assistance nonprofit. When investigators traced where that cash had come from, they discovered New Hope was accepting donations from shell companies and individuals with no connection to refugee services or humanitarian work. These donors were fronts for the Sinaloa cartel, and the donations were drug proceeds being laundered through New Hope's nonprofit bank accounts. The scheme was brilliant in its exploitation of nonprofit operations. Drug money from cartel operations across the United States would be delivered to New Hope in cash, sometimes in duffel bags, sometimes in boxes labeled as humanitarian supplies. The cash would be deposited into New Hope's accounts as anonymous donations or recorded as cash payments from refugees receiving services. Once in New Hope's accounts, the money would be mixed with legitimate grant funding, making it impossible to distinguish clean money from cartel proceeds. The money would then be transferred to various entities, legitimate vendors, shell companies, international money transfer services that would route it back to cartel operations in Mexico or distribute it to cartel operatives in the U.S. New Hope functioned as a washing machine. Dirty drug money went in one side, clean money came out the other, and the nonprofit's humanitarian reputation provided perfect cover. If you're starting to understand how this scheme worked, comment "hidden laundering" and hit like, because investigators would discover evidence even more shocking than financial records. FBI obtained authorization for physical surveillance of New Hope's headquarters and Abdirahman Hassan's movements. What they observed confirmed the money laundering operation was active and ongoing. Surveillance teams documented vehicles arriving at New Hope's facility late at night, after the organization's regular business hours when refugee families weren't being served. Men would unload boxes and duffel bags from these vehicles and carry them into the building through a rear entrance that wasn't visible from the street. The vehicle's license plates traced to rental companies and shell corporations with no legitimate business connection to refugee services. The men were identified through facial recognition as individuals with cartel connections. Some had criminal records for drug trafficking, others appeared in DEA databases as suspected cartel operatives. It wasn't humanitarian work being discussed, it was money laundering logistics. Another intercept captured Abdirahman discussing the refugee program itself. The government grants are perfect cover. No one questions a refugee organization receiving millions in cash donations. And if anyone does ask, we just say it's community support for vulnerable families. The refugee services we actually provide cost almost nothing. The real business is moving money. It was clinical acknowledgement that New Hope's refugee programs existed primarily to disguise money laundering. Based on accumulated evidence, FBI obtained a search warrant for New Hope's facility and Abdirahman's residence. The raid was scheduled for a Thursday morning in January 2024. Before we continue with the raid that exposed $250 million in cash hidden inside walls, I need to be honest with you. Investigations like this require enormous resources to research properly. This isn't just retelling headlines. This is weeks of analyzing nonprofit fraud patterns, money laundering operations, and ensuring accuracy. We're a small team bringing you stories others won't explore. Stories about how humanitarian organizations can be corrupted and how systems designed to help vulnerable people can be weaponized. If you want us to keep making these investigations, consider joining our channel membership. Your support funds the research that makes this possible. Members get early access and exclusive content. Click the join button. Now let's continue with the raid that found a fortune hidden behind walls. At 6 a.m. on Thursday, FBI and ICE tactical teams surrounded New Hope Community Services headquarters. Agents breached multiple entrances simultaneously, securing the 40,000-square-foot facility before anyone could destroy evidence. Abdirahman Hassan was arrested in his private executive office, attempting to delete files from computers and shred documents. What agents found in that office would become the most shocking image from the entire investigation. When agents searched Abdirahman's office more thoroughly, one agent noticed that a section of wall sounded hollow when tapped. They brought in tools and carefully removed the drywall panel. Behind the wall was a hidden room, approximately 8 feet by 12 feet, accessible only through Abdirahman's office. And inside that room was $47 million in cash, bills stacked floor to ceiling in organized bundles, sorted by denomination, with some stacks still in bank wrappers. It looked like a scene from a movie, a literal wall of money hidden inside a non-profit organization supposedly dedicated to helping refugees. But that wasn't the only hidden cash. As agents searched the rest of the facility, they found more concealed spaces. A storage closet had a false back wall hiding another $23 million. A conference room had a raised floor concealing $18 million. The building's mechanical room had a hidden compartment behind HVAC equipment, storing $34 million. In total, agents found $250 million in cash hidden throughout New Hope's facility, money that should have been in bank accounts, not literally stuffed inside walls. The evidence seized beyond the cash was overwhelming. Agents confiscated computers containing financial records showing 10 years of fraud and money laundering. They found ledgers documenting cartel cash deliveries, dates, amounts, and distributions. They found communications with cartel coordinators coordinating money transfers. They also found evidence of the nonprofit fraud, fake employee files for people who didn't exist, fabricated vendor invoices for services never provided, and forged case notes documenting refugee assistance that was never given. At Abdirahman's residence, a $4.8 million mansion in a wealthy Minneapolis suburb, agents found another $67 million in cash hidden in a basement vault, along with documents, passports, and communication devices used to coordinate with cartel financial operatives. At trial, the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors presented financial analysis showing $89 million in stolen government grants, $187 million in cartel money laundered through the nonprofit, and the $250 million in cash found hidden in walls. Abdirahman's defense claimed he'd been threatened by cartels and forced to participate, but prosecutors presented evidence showing he'd lived lavishly on stolen and laundered money, voluntarily enriching himself while betraying refugees who trusted his organization. The jury deliberated 9 hours, guilty on all counts: fraud, theft of government funds, money laundering, conspiracy, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Abdirahman Hassan was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. He would be 97 years old if he lived to see release. The impact on Minneapolis's refugee community was devastating. 15,000 families had relied on New Hope for services. Many had received legitimate help, real English classes, real job training, real housing assistance. But the revelation that the organization's founder had stolen millions meant programs would be shut down, staff would lose jobs, and vulnerable families would lose services. At a community meeting held after Abdirahman's arrest, a Somali refugee woman spoke through tears. "My family used New Hope's English classes. They helped my children learn. Now I learned the man who ran that program was a criminal stealing from us while pretending to help us. How do we trust anyone again?" Tonight, several truths demand attention. First, nonprofit status doesn't prevent corruption. It can enable it by providing humanitarian cover for criminal operations. Second, refugee assistance programs are vulnerable to exploitation because they handle large amounts of government funding with limited oversight. Third, money laundering operations seek out institutions with legitimate reasons to receive large cash deposits, and humanitarian organizations are perfect targets. Fourth, the human cost includes both stolen funds that should have helped vulnerable people and the destruction of trust in humanitarian organizations. And finally, we must ask, how many other nonprofits have been similarly corrupted? If you believe those who exploit humanitarian organizations deserve maximum punishment, tap like. If you believe nonprofits need better oversight, comment audit nonprofits. And if you want us to keep exposing these frauds, subscribe, join our membership, and share this video, because the fight to protect humanitarian organizations isn't over. Not in Minneapolis, not in refugee services, and not anywhere that good intentions can be exploited for criminal profit.